Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Terrence Malick's Song to Song. Now this is, the last Malick, the last one I hadn't seen before, doing this kind of director series. As I've said before, I reviewed The New World that I had seen previously, the first three Malicks, and The Tree of Life. I gave that a rewatch. I thought The Tree of Life was a masterpiece. And his first three films, two of them are in my top 50 of all time, as I've said before. But, he has got this phase now, his second phase really, that began with To the Wonder for me. He was practicing this sort of stuff, I think, in The New World, but that was more of a traditional, for the most part, a traditional narrative, you could say. I thought that was a bit mediocre though, The New World, and yeah, I liked it, but it was only a barely it's under average. I liked it, yeah, but I didn't, really like it, and it was disappointing. But Terrence Malick is for me one of the greatest directors of all time, based on his top four, and certainly the top two films that he's made are some of the absolute, for me, greatest films in cinema. I think one of them is one of the 30 best films ever made. It's that good, and I won't reveal which one yet, but we'll get to it. But Song to Song, I was really nervous about this film. I had seen a scene before, well, a couple of scenes on YouTube, just some clips, and it looked very random once again, and that's what you really could sum up his second phase. Just kind of random, a bit bizarre, and non-linear for the sake of it, you could say. But I think really, Knight of Cups I saw, and that was weak. It really was. But To the Wonder I thought was an actually bad film. I really did. You could say actually I was a bit surprised with this one actually. It wasn't quite as bad as I thought it'd be. And really his second phase, I think, has gotten better each time. I think this is better than Knight of Cups and To the Wonder. And it actually had consistently, consistent characters, you could say, actual characters, and which really wasn't in To the Wonder, and for the most part, so Knight of Cups didn't really have characters in it. This gave me something to care about quite a lot, and as well, it did have some random stuff, but I think that some of the randomness is a bit more. It's not quite as as a tonal break, because it is that music scene that he's trying to tap into, the Austin Texas music scene, and in itself, the nature of a lot of the music stuff now, it's quite out there, it's quite random, it's quite sporadic and stuff. So it didn't quite break the tone, you could say, because To the Wonder basically it was this traditional romance mixed in with this experimental kind of art film, and that didn't mesh at all. But this is more, music in itself, art and stuff like that. It is experimental, you could say. In its early stages, and that's why I think some of the randomness in this film is a bit more warranted. Some of it isn't though, which we'll get to. But once again, an all-star cast. Ryan Gosling, who's one of my favourite actors today. You've got Rooney Mara, and you've got Michael Fassbender, Natalie Portman again, Cate Blanchett again, who's once again really good in this film. You've got some bizarre appearances from Val Kilmer and stuff, and Holly Hunter as well appears. But yeah, I was quite surprised. Early on, it did have some characters that I cared for. The romance in this film as well, between Rooney Mara and Ryan Gosling, I thought was actually good. I did care about the romance, and it did frustrate me at times. But I was surprised about, it did have characters, and that shouldn't be a surprise from Malick. But after these last two films, To the Wonder, Knight of Cups, it's refreshing a bit to actually be able to latch onto something and care, and just be invested in something. And there was times where there was spaces of the film where it was a bit too detached and stuff, but for the most part it did focus on these characters quite a bit, and some of the script, once again written and directed by Malick, You know, the script was much better than these last two films. I think there was some really good, quite a good character development. And you know, her father in the film as well, Rooney Mara's father. You know, she plays Faye in the film. Faye's father in the film, you know, the scenes with him, that was quite good as well, actually. I really liked that. You know, there was stuff going on there, and there was, you know, things explored and stuff, and you know, there was quite a bit of heart to the film, which I couldn't say about To the Wonder, really, especially. But yeah, it was a surprise. Once again, the cinematography, you know, Emmanuel Lubezki worked with Malick, and yeah, the cinematography once again is really, really good, especially some of the ending shots and stuff. I think some of the stuff though, when you know he's in the cities and that, he's not his best really. Malick, he's not quite. You know, it's always better when he's in these rural locations, which you know some of the film does do. You know, it is. But yeah, we'll talk about quite a lot of the flaws though that bring it down, you know, quite a bit. Michael Fassbender, first of all, his character, you know, there was touches where he was quite good, his character, but it was very bizarre. He was probably the most bizarre character, you know, jumping about, just doing weird things, you know, and as well he was very unlikable in this film. His character was, you know, you could say some sort of a villain in this film. But yes, I didn't enjoy him in this film really at all. And there was this bizarre appearance from this woman, you know, when she was talking about her late husband or something. That was, you know, very unnecessary, I think. And, you know, there is, again, a lot of bizarre stuff, you know, random stuff throughout the film. That is just, you know, I think Malick trying to be different, and yeah, I think a lot of it obviously is to do with the editing. Once again, a lot of jump cuts, you know, choppy editing. As I say, it doesn't quite, you know, feel as abrupt as To the Wonder, because you know it is more this music, you know, film, and you know, as I say, it is quite sporadic. That's sort of the nature of it. So it kind of works a bit better, but you know, still, he didn't have to cut it, you know, as choppily as this. Again, it did detract from some of the actual cinematography, you know, the way it was captured. And yes, there's again, you know, a lot of, I think, GoPro stuff, which you know doesn't fit, and you know, it doesn't fit when you know you've got these. You know, these wide shots, landscape shots, and everything, and you know it's quite stunning. You know, in that sense, and traditional. I don't think it quite meshes, but a bit more so than the past two films, especially you know Knife Cups. But yes, I did care about the characters. I did think that you know Ryan Gosling was really good in this film. Rooney Mara was really good. Cate Blanchett, she was good. Natalie Portman was quite good actually as well. You know, when she was in it. And you know you've got the woman from Skyfall as well, the Bond girl in that. She was good in this film. Now there was quite a lot of sex scenes, and I think sometimes he did indulge a little bit in some of the sex scenes, as in like there wasn't always something going on within them scenes, and it was just kind of it slowed the film down a bit. You know, it didn't compel me enough to have, you know, warrant the 20+ sex scenes. But you know, some of them were done well, and it did have character growth and stuff, and things going on. You know, exploring different things there, and you know, there's quite a lot of themes in this film that he does explore. You know, and you know that the kind of the questions he always tries to you know explore. You know, one's place, you know, in the universe. You know, he does achieve that to an extent here. However, there is just so much bizarre stuff that goes on. It does bring it down once again, and you know there isn't really a proper, you know, traditional narrative in the sense of, you know, Badlands or something like that. And you know, at times it doesn't quite you know come together as I think he would have liked. Although I really don't know, you know, what he's trying to really achieve now. It's very random stuff. But as I've said, you know, before, Raid Gun, it looks like he's going back to a traditional narrative there, you know, in the sense of maybe Thin Red Line at least. So I really look forward to that. And you know, I was quite, you know, I wasn't quite as disappointed as I thought I would be. But say if I had gone from the Thin Red Line to this, yes, I would be, you know, more pissed off. It doesn't affect my score. But you know, going from his worst two really for me, to The Wonder and Knight of Cups, to this, you know, yeah, it's quite refreshing. There is some, you know, really good acting in it. There's some good characters. As I say, the romance. I really like the central romance in the film. There is places though it does go off adrift. You know, when they're kind of wandering about in the second half, and it does detract a little bit as well. Another thing is the soundtrack. Now, this is a bit more. The highs of this soundtrack basically are better than you know, his past two films. But there is quite a lot of songs in it that are mind-numbing. You know, they're brain destroying really. The soundtrack is a very mixed bag. It's better. His highs of the soundtrack, you know, is better than you know, his past two, as I've said. But there is some real lows. Songs that are just crap, you know. The soundtrack is used pretty well though throughout the film for the most part, you know, in different scenes, to kind of elevate, you know, the classical pieces, mainly. But overall the soundtrack is a very mixed bag. And you know, there is quite a lot of random stuff, as I've said, that goes on. So overall, you know, this it's a lot better than I'd say than Knight of Cups and you know, To the Wonder, and it's not quite as bad as say Mark Kermode as you know, made out, you know, one of the 10 worst films of the year, you know, 2017, and it's not bad or anything like that, but I do think it's just below average still. And although there is some really good stuff, you know, in there. And stuff that I did care about, it is, you know, mixed in with, you know, a lot of random scenes, bizarre performance from Michael Fassbender, you know, stuff that is less so but still a bit pretentious, you know, less so than his previous two. Still is a bit pretentious, self-indulgent as well, you know, as I've said, with the sex scenes and stuff at times, and just, you know, some of the scenes that are out there, you know, for the sake of it, really. And yeah, no, and it never really comes together on a really, you know, strong level. You know, it doesn't quite do that. There is a lot of stuff I did really like about it, and I did follow, you know, in some sense, a narrative, but it was very fragmented. You know, the line goes, and there's bits that, you know, mixed in between in there, as you could say. You know, some really good scenes were just at times followed by some pretty weak ones, and you know, there's still a lot of bizarre stuff, and the editing is very flawed once again. So I think this is mediocre. You know, it is a like from me. You know, I do like it. It's like the New World, really. It's a bit below average, just a bit. I do like it. You know, really. You know, it's mainly if it's a 50% or less, I don't like the film. There is some films that are mediocre that I still like, you know, care for a bit. This is one of them. But, you know, I think it is very similar to the New World. And actually the New World has, you know, lower lows than this. Because as well, it doesn't fit the tone. That was more of a traditional, you know, period piece, you know. And bizarre stuff in that is even worse. So I think I'll give it the same score. I'll give it a 57%. I believe that's what I gave the New World. You know, there is some great stuff in there at times. There's some really good stuff. A lot of the times. There is some bad stuff, some weak stuff in there. You know, bizarre scenes, stuff that doesn't really go anywhere. And you know, Michael Fassbender wasn't good in this film. You got bizarre things with Val Kilmer. And you know, once again, it was very, very experimental. You could feel that, and you know, it's not quite a complete piece yet. You know, it's another Malick that's very, it is inconsistent. Less so than, as I've said, these last two films that he made. To the Wonder, Knight of Cups, and it does have a much better protagonist. Ryan Gosling is really good in this film. There's a really touching scene, towards the end of the film, which I won't ruin. And the characters in this film, they do act out of character sometimes, but for the most part, particularly Ryan Gosling's character and Rooney Mara, they are really good, they are good characters, and there's good performances in this film. Cate Blanchett as well. Natalie Portman, I was quite impressed with her. There is a couple of shit performances, from side characters and stuff as well, which I've not really gone into, but and there is of course a lot of bizarre stuff, pretentious stuff, and stuff that just doesn't, it does detract, like the editing, as I've said. So 57, it's mediocre, and it's just ever so slightly below average. Really, that means, because 60% is an average from me. And so, it's another inconsistent Malick film, song to song, but it has got some really good stuff in there, actually. And the cinematography once again and stuff. But it's the fact that it has got strong characters at times, and stuff I can latch onto, and a script that does deliver, and narration at times. But yes, it is slightly under average, and it's another Malick film that really isn't Malick standards at all. But yeah, no, they have got consistently better these last three films from Malick, and I really look forward to Raid Gund. And yeah, his return to a more traditional Malick style. But yes, now I've seen all the Malick films, and To the Wonder was a lot worse than I thought it'd be. But overall, it's not quite as bad as I thought it'd be. The phase 2 of Malick, not quite as bad. But next up, I'll be rewatching and reviewing Badlands, of course. Days of Heaven, on the Criterion edition, and Thin Red Line, of course, on my Steelbook. They will all be done within the next 2 weeks, along with the ranking of the Malicks. And as I've said, 2 of them films are in my top 50 of these films, 3 films. Maybe you can guess what ones they are, but probably not, actually, a bit unexpected. And yes, I'll be doing my ranking, which will be pretty predictable if you've seen my reviews of all the films. But yes, thanks for watching my review, and check out my reviews, and expect more to come on Malick in the next couple of weeks, and yeah, more reviews and stuff, and yeah, thanks for watching.